Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Hans Pearson, CEO of the Store Local Group.
And I'm Mark Gregg, I'm the National Head of Revenue for Store Local.
In light of recent events, we thought we'd get some experts from all around the globe to share their experiences and give us something to take away and apply it into our businesses over the coming days and weeks.
We're really excited, so let's get into it. So today on StoreCast, we're very lucky enough to have Javier. Javier, welcome to the StoreCast today. If I could just get you to introduce yourself and your business, that would be great.
Thanks, Mark. My name's Javier. I own a business called StoreCAD, Self-Storage Designs. I started off in the self-storage industry a few years back, actually, just working for a construction company that specialises in self-storage. And about 12 months ago, I saw the need for a designer that specifically works on self-storage facilities, because there's not a lot of that out there. So look, I took that opportunity and separated myself from that construction company and solely work for myself now, designing and doing a small amount of tender management for self-storage projects as well. So, you know, I continue looking at new ways to improve on that initial design process, and a lot of that comes down to, you know, regulations through council, which are typically things aren't really thought of very much in the self-storage industry. It's mainly architects who have taken on commercial warehouses and have that sort of experience, but they don't have the experience in the self-storage industry. So specifically tailoring how you lodge to council with these projects is something that I've spent a lot of research and developing the business around that aspect.
Fantastic. So Javier, how has your business been impacted through COVID?
Look, I suppose there's two aspects to my business. One is the architectural designs of self-storage, which I haven't been impacted too much on, because I can quite easily set myself up to work from home to do that type of work. The other aspect of my business is the 3D laser scanning of facilities to create as-built drawings. Now, 60% of the sites that I design are retrofit buildings, and one of the biggest issues that I saw in the construction industry was the lack of detail in the planning side of the construction, so the early on piece. And so I've invested quite heavily in 3D laser scanning technology, which allows me to go on site and create a full 360-degree laser model of the building, which captures absolutely everything. So little detail is missed, and you know, it allows for less mistakes to happen down the track when it comes to the retrofit. And because of the lack of travel that you're allowed to have at the moment, that's probably the main factor that's impacted my business. And you know, only with the restrictions easing up as of last week, I've been able to, you know, drive down to Melbourne and start that process again on a couple of projects that have been on hold.
Oh, fantastic. No, I've certainly been lucky enough to do a virtual walk around at the conference with facilities that you've done. Certainly, it's really interesting to see that type of technology being introduced to the self-storage sector. So seeing something from a piece of paper is pretty challenging, but to have a virtual walk around a facility to actually touch and feel it, I think it's absolutely fantastic, and something that is long overdue for our industry. So appreciate obviously what you offer to the industry. So Javier, what would be your key takeaways within the building sector since COVID? Or what are you going to be putting in plan for moving forward?
I suppose some of the things that I've been requested by my clients recently as a result of COVID has been a bit more thought around, you know, the access control, traffic movements, how to automate these sites So they don't necessarily need a site manager to show people around. So look, there has been typically a lot of the work goes into the internal design of these sites, and the exterior, yes, it is very important, but I've seen a lot stronger focus on the exterior now, making sure that these sites can be automated. And yeah, moving forward, absolutely, that's going to be one of the biggest takeoffs is people are going to start focusing a lot more on automation.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, we certainly talked about it here at Store Local. Obviously, innovation is something that we're pretty strong about. I think there'll always be an element for a staffing involvement, obviously, across our sites. And that's also due to the fact that our product being self-storage isn't something that is overly known in the wider communities. If we can make self-storage known as like a lifestyle choice, that will certainly go a long way to educating other people that haven't used self-storage what are the benefits of self-storage, and that brings down to how do you innovate it, accessible. People want 24/7 now. So security will be obviously another feature for that as well. And in terms of, are there things that you're seeing that would change the self-storage landscape, the way that we're perhaps doing things now, apart from the staffing element? Anything else that you could add there?
So looking at it, separating yourself from the whole COVID thing, some of the recent things that I've seen as of late last year are the stricter ruling around your fire control on these buildings. I think moving forward, I can see there's going to be a lot more change to the traditional cookie cutter, lightweight construction that these self-storage facilities have been, because of these fire issues. I can see a lot more mezzanine floors being constructed out of concrete rather than your lightweight steel, and a lot more basically exterior with your water control systems being upgraded. There's going to be a lot more sprinkler systems throughout the buildings. I think that's separating yourself from the whole COVID thing. Moving forward, just especially with the recent bushfires that we've had, there's a lot of conflicting issues between separate states. So these sort of issues are definitely getting a lot more strict through Queensland than it is New South Wales. But I think it's going to be only a short matter of time before all the states come into line with one consolidated rule across these class type of buildings. And that's definitely going to change how people design these sites and how they're going to be accessed, how they're going to be, what type of construction. Typically you have your self-storage construction companies which specialise in this lightweight construction, but then you have your higher tier builders which specialise in this heavier type construction. And now that's getting incorporated into how these buildings are getting tendered out. You're going out to tender for a specific construction company for the shell of the construction, and then you're going out to tender for a separate company doing the internal fit out. It's gonna go down that path for a lot more of the facilities. I think the lightweight cookie cutter design is on its way out.
Yeah, I definitely see the product changing, as you said, from a cookie cutter, listening and understanding what customers are actually after as well. They're putting their goods into a self-storage unit. They really want to make sure they get the best possible service, but the best possible features within that as well. Having a nice, clean, presentable site. But, seeing sites, we're about to do Hendra. It's a 4-level facility. There's others that, five levels. Self-storage is definitely changing. It's very much a retail aspect, right down to the shop front. And that customer journey from the curbside to the office is definitely changing, and there needs to be elements of obviously how you do that. But if we sort of go back to the building, and you mentioned about sprinklers, obviously we're seeing that now, obviously through projects that we do, we're putting sprinklers in. Others are doing the same. So it sort of seems to be probably the normal is actually sprinklers. And yeah, obviously within Queensland, with Queensland Fire, it changes. But you make a good point. Like if they all sort of come together, the states, and actually have a generalised rule, that would be good. Because obviously when you're building and when you're understanding the feasibility of this, it becomes challenging. And I suppose that's the other thing is that, so through this sort of period of time, have you sort of seen people not maybe pause in terms of not going forward, but now coming and looking back and going, okay, let's have a look at that, re-engage on that property? Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, that definitely has happened, and look, that's mainly been a factor of the COVID. So, you know, generally for a few projects that I had through February, March, those sites were going through a feasibility stage, and because of the uncertainty that those projects didn't actually move forward because it's very, you know, high risk at this stage. But because Australia hasn't been affected by the COVID as much other countries, we can see that you know, things are slowly starting to come back to normal, and I'm starting to see these sites that had dropped off early on this year now going back into renegotiation stage to, you know, for the acquisition side of things to, you know, get these projects underway again. But look, in saying that, I've also had early on in the piece projects that you know, the clients had already owned the warehouses, all the sites ready to move forward. They'd probably put these projects off for a few months because their other businesses were still flourishing, and they just wanted to hold off on the self-storage conversion. And I've seen those type of projects actually come forward because of the other businesses aren't doing so well anymore. So, and that definitely tells me that self-storage is quite constant. It's a very safe bet to, you know, type of industry to move into. And, you know, these other companies where, you know, they've had to let off a lot of staff, they're now trying to push forward with the self-storage construction as quickly as possible because they can see that the industry is still quite strong.
Yeah, look, I think it's certainly shown over the last few months, you know, the GFC, other sort of things that we've all taken on in terms of how long we've been in the industry for, that it is relatively a resilient type market. Obviously, there's a big element, obviously discounting that seems to be pretty apparent at the moment. But yeah, in terms of obviously others that were not perhaps thinking about getting in self-storage will probably see it as a real good opportunity. I think also it's an opportunity to sit back a little bit and understand, and this is those that might be coming into the industry, what is the moving pieces? Because yeah, as you said, you know, customer definitely will want the ability to do full-blown contactless move-ins. You know, that whole aspect will need to be re-examined and really understand that customer journey, the type of product that you're using within the self-storage sector, and having concrete floors, you know, right, is unbelievable. So Javier,
for me, it'd be quite interesting that contactless move-ins, because, you know, one thought that I've had is it's great for people that have used self-storage in the past. They know how it works. It's quite easy for them to, you know, go online and book themselves in, and they know how to access these sites. It'd be quite interesting that, you know, the newcomers to the industry that haven't used self-storage before, who prefer that face-to-face contact in that office, to be explained the process. It's going to be quite interesting to see if we do go down the path of, you know, more automation, how is that going to impact your move-ins as well? It's going to be quite interesting to see.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a balancing act, Javier. Is there anything else that you'd like to share to the listeners today?
Look, it's definitely a great industry to be in. I predominantly work in Australia and New Zealand, and for me, it's definitely a safe bet to continue developing these sites and running these sites, because it's, for me, being a fairly new business and being as safe as I have been throughout this whole COVID thing, just proves to me that yeah, you can't go wrong by staying in self-storage. So yeah, I definitely would stick in with it.
Fantastic. Well, Javier, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you on to share what your business does, how that sort of impacted in terms of the building, but obviously looking forward to the future of self-storage. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks, Mark. It's been a pleasure.